Hi guys, welcome to Learn Electronics Repair. Somebody asked on a video recently if I would explain and show how I set up a Workbench as a recording studio for YouTube. So if you're interested in this, you want to know how to do this, I suspect this will work for most sorts of repair type work or hobbyist type work if you're a builder or a maker, and it works well for my system for repair. So if you're interested in seeing this is all the hardware and software that I use, how it's all set and connected up, great. And if you're not really interested, well, don't blame me, blame the subscribers who asked for this. I did actually reply to the guy who asked, and I said, well, if there's more interest, I will. And I got quite a few thumbs up and likes on that, so I guess that, yeah, counts as interest. Okay, so let me show you how this is all set up. I'll show you the hardware first, and I'll show you how it's connected. I will just mention that this setup kind of evolved, so it wasn't originally like this. It's been through various iterations. My first videos were using my mobile phone for audio and video, then a webcam. I've tried various things like headsets, lavalier mics that clip on, and other methods to end up where we are really. So the first thing we'll start with is this. So this, you can see, is a inexpensive webcam. Basically, it's kind of fastened with insulation tape, of course, onto a little kind of bendy tripod thing. So this was my original webcam. It was above the bench at one time. And I'll just show you the rest of the setup using this, and I'll explain how it all connects together. So here we are. I have my monitor, or one of my two monitors here, you can see. And on top of here, there's another webcam. So this is, we call this face cam. This is the one that's pointing towards me. And this is what's recording my face when you see me in the corner of the screen. Okay, so that's face cam. The one I'm holding, I showed you the webcam, we call this instrument cam. It will come clear later. And I have two more. So this one is side cam. I call this side cam. Okay. This is a USB camera. It has a manual focus, manual zoom, and manual aperture. This will zoom from, if I just clear the dust off it, it's 5mm to 50mm. So this is wide angle to a reasonable amount of zoom. So that is side cam, okay? Behind that, you see my microscope. So this is the optical microscope, trinocular, on top as a camera. That one, this is actually HDMI and USB, but I'm using this as a HDMI camera. This is the one camera I have that will actually do 60 frames per second. Currently, I'm recording all my videos at 30 frames a second, 1080p. And that seems to work well enough. It gives quite a good compromise between file size and smoothness of movement. Because I'm not moving around stuff too fast, I don't get anything much in the way of blur. So that's that camera on the microscope. I then have above me, I actually move a bit further away, we can probably see it better. Okay, so this is my overhead camera. This again is on 1080p. Okay, it's a Sony. There is actually a model number on this somewhere. Let me see. HDR-AX2000. Okay, so that's the second HDMI source, video source. I then have the USB microscope across the other side of the desk. This is a Andon Star AD407. This is also HDMI, so that's 3 HDMI video sources. And lastly, I have another HDMI video source that's hiding behind the other monitor. You see, I have two monitors on the desk. I'll tell you what they're for in a little while, but behind here, I'll just move us out of the way. You can see back there is a computer. So that's the second computer, not the one I'm recording on. I use this basically when I want to browse websites and things like that, or look at schematics. So I use it basically as a video source for that. And that's connected by HDMI again into the recording system. So I have 4 HDMI video sources and I have 3 USB cameras as well. So that's what I actually have. My other computer, this is the one I'm actually recording on, that's down here, this machine. Okay, the one on the right. So that is my recording and for that matter streaming if I want to live stream. That's that machine connected to this monitor. So the 2 computers, the one which I use for browsing web pages and looking at schematics, that actually came from the car boot sale, to be quite honest. It was one I found at the car boot sale. It's an i5-7400, 3 gigahertz, 8 gig of DDR4. It has a 256 gig SSD, which is the boot drive, and then it has a 1 terabyte SATA drive, hard drive, just for data storage. Okay, the one I record on, this was built from parts I found at the car boot sale, and it's been gradually upgraded as the time's gone by. So this one is currently an i7-7700K running at 4.2 gigahertz. I don't have it overclocked, it's just running at 4.2, 16 gig of DDR4. It has a 500 gig M2 drive, which is the operating system, and a 250 gig SSD, which is the target drive for the recordings. It also has a 500 gig and a 4 terabyte hard drive just for the data storage. The one for web browsing, which I use as a video source, has the Intel video, the built-in VGA, or HDMI I should say. And this recording machine, this has a RTX 2070 Super. It doesn't really need that power of graphics card for recording. It used to have a GTX 750 Ti in and was recording just fine. I put the 2070 Super in on the basis I might at some point want to do live streaming. And then you have to compress the video in real time, so you do need a fast graphics card for that. The 4 HDMI sources I mentioned, so that's the 2 microscopes, the second PC and the overhead camera, go into this unit, this NavSeca USB 3 4x1 switcher, okay, and that's then converted to USB 3 and goes down to the recording system. I also have here another capture unit, this one. Okay, this was about €20 from AliExpress, the 4-way one. That was about, I think, €80 or 80 to 90. I think they had an offer on at the time. It was something like 80 maybe. Both of these connect into the recording computer. I'll come on to this one in a minute, but that one has the 4 video sources we were talking about, HDMI. Okay, so I'll come to how I get into the corner of the picture in a minute. I'll explain all of this. But we're now on the overhead camera. So this is the Sony cam that's over the bench. This has the greatest zoom range of all the cameras. So I can actually zoom out to here. That's on the widest angle. And I can zoom in, well, to there. So that's on the highest zoom. So I actually have a really wide range of zoom. You can see I'm doing that manually. I have my arm in the air. This camera is supposed to have a remote. I don't have the remote. Detlef actually gave me this when he came over here because he didn't have a use for it. So again, this wasn't new when I got hold of it. This was kind of on permanent at the moment loan to me. Okay, so we can thank Detlef for that. Previously I had the manual zoom camera, but that was also manual focus. The advantage of this one is this is an autofocus camera. Okay, so if I knock the focus out, give it a couple of seconds, look, it focuses back in again. Okay, so that's the overhead camera. I call this bench cam or overhead. Okay, now that I've showed you is connected to that 4-way NavSeca thing, and with the NavSeca I have this, and I can choose the 4 video sources just pressing the buttons on here. So for example, if I go to 1, which you're on now, that is the overhead. 2, that is the hand-on start microscope. 3, this is the optical microscope. And 4, that's the other PC, the one I can use to browse the internet. So just by pressing the remote, I can switch between any of those 4 sources. And one of those 4 is almost always the background image, if you like, on my videos. Okay. But I can, if I want to, in the software, just grab hold of this window, and I can also have myself full screen. In fact, I can have any of the cameras full screen, but 4 of them are done just from this little remote. This does a few other things as well. It has a few more buttons on here. So if I go to mode, give it a second, look, I can do that with it. We just mode again. You see? So I can do a few different things with this. Personally, I've found no use for these other modes at the moment, but hey, it does it, yeah. And I can just go back to pressing any of the video sources and it goes back to that one. So that's how the HDMI, the 4 video sources, are used on the setup. The software I use for recording, this is OBS Studio, okay? This is free software. You can download this completely for free. You can use it for any purpose, commercial or otherwise, for free. And this is not limited in any way, okay? So it's not, there's like a trial version. This is free software. So this is what I use for recording, and I could also use this for streaming as well. So at the bottom of the screen here, you can see I have start and stop recording, start streaming. Those are the only 2 that I use, unless I want to change any settings on this. You can see we're recording at the moment because you're watching this anyway, yeah. We can see the audio meters. I'll explain how the audio system works as well. It's not quite as simple as you may think, but I'll come to that. And then these are the video sources. We talked about these. So overhead, this is one of the 4 video sources I was selecting with this remote. The 2 microscopes, the other PC, or the overhead Sony camera. I have face, that's the camera that's on the desktop above me. Okay. I have instruments, that's the one on the little tripod, the webcam I was using to show you around the setup. I have side, that's the one I showed you with the 5 to 50mm zoom on that we're actually watching on now. And then I have capture. Now I mentioned there was another HDMI to USB 3 converter up there. That's the one I use to capture from particularly computers or graphics cards when I'm repairing them, or sometimes set-top boxes. So that has a HDMI input, and I can also use a DVI adapter with that as well. So that's what capture is. And I can switch any of these on. Look, you see that's instruments, okay? Face, off, on, okay? And I can also size any of these as well as switching them on or off. So for example, I can make myself or any other camera any size I want, move it anywhere I want on the screen, okay? And this works in a layered manner. So basically, whichever is at the top comes first in the layer, okay? Window capture actually allows me to set a window of any size I want on the desktop on this machine and capture from that. I can just minimize the recording software when I do that. Okay, face, we know. Instruments, we know all of these now. Capture, this is my capture card, the one I mentioned. It's not actually plugged into anything at the moment, okay? And overhead. So that's how I set the video sources, how I select which camera I want to use. I can layer them up however I like. Okay, like so. OBS will then allow you to create a scene, which basically means you can set up the windows as you want, and then call it, whatever scene you like, and then you can just record the scenes by clicking on whichever one you want. I don't actually use that feature on the live stream. We do on the electronics channel, which has a similar setup, not quite so complex as this one. We do use scenes because on live recording and streaming, effectively you just want to switch from one to the other. When I'm recording videos to publish later, I just set up the scene as I wish because I effectively want to be a bit more flexible. I'll move things around to different points on the screen depending what else they might be in the way of, yeah? Okay, so that's the cameras. I'll show you roughly what I do with this side of the instrument to give you an idea how I use them. So with instruments cam, this is the one that I actually use like this. You've seen it on my videos many times. Now you can see actually how I do it, okay? It can be anywhere on the desk. I can easily look at 1 or 2 multimeters with this. You'll see I get glare sometimes, so it allows me to just effectively angle this however I want to get rid of the glare, okay? So that's what instrument cameras normally used for. And of course I mentioned we can put it wherever we want, we can put it whatever size you want, okay? Side cam, this is the one I normally use for my oscilloscope. This is why it's called side cam. So on my workbench you can see the second monitor. I'll just mention that after we describe this. So on this side I have oscilloscopes, I have my various bench power supplies, my variac is back here, actually just move the monitor. Okay, variac, current limiting light bulb above that. So this is effectively what I call the side, yeah. So side cam is normally used to show something from over there. And this is where the zoom and manual focus come in. So I can actually zoom in right across the bench. This means I can be working in the center of the bench and I can use the instruments. The camera is on the other side of the bench, it's completely out of my way, so it doesn't bother me or affect me in any way when I'm looking at the oscilloscopes and power supplies, yeah? So that's what side cam is used for. As mentioned before, I'll normally set the camera up first and then hit record. So on the bench I have the 2 monitors, okay. This one I use for recording and I can actually see all the layered images. I can see myself in the corner. So with this I can actually see the output from all the cameras. This one I can either see the output from the switch and it will give me a full screen image, okay. So when I'm actually working, when I'm browsing schematics, I'm using the hand-on star microscope. For example, I'll be using this screen. Again, I often use it effectively with the overhead camera. So while I'm soldering something, this is in front of me. So this is really for me to look at rather than anything else. I can also use this one to select VGA. So if I want to just connect to an old computer that only has VGA, I can do that, okay. And I can point a camera at it to record from it. I do have a VGA to USB adapter. I need to test it. So that may be in addition. If I choose DVI on here, I can see the output from the capture card. The one that I use to connect to computers I'm testing that have either HDMI or DVI. And back to HDMI gives me the 4 views from here. Okay, so lighting. I use over the bench, you can see it there. that has 2 fluorescent tubes in. It's mounted to a wooden batten that just rests on the shelves either side, so I can slide it forwards or backwards depending where I want the illumination. And in the corner right there you see something glowing. So that's actually a photographic LED floodlight. It's too bright when it's pointing directly at me, but if I put it in the corner like that and let it reflect from the shelving, it gives a nice light on myself. I'll switch it off and you'll see the difference it makes. Okay, so that's with the light on. If you look at me in the corner, yeah, you see that difference? So that's what gives me a nice even lighting. That's that one, yeah. The microscopes, well, they have their own built-in lighting on the on star and on the optical microscope. So that's how the lighting is set up. Audio. So this is my microphone. Okay, Audio Technica microphone. This is an omnidirectional capacitor mic, so it has some phantom power, 48 volts, and that will pick up sound from all directions. I used to have a directional mic, but this works a lot better, okay? So that's the microphone, and that connects to this mixer. So, in fact, you can see the VU meters moving. So the microphone plugs into this mixer on this cable. Okay, and then the output from the mixer goes to the input of the sound card on the recording PC. This allows me to set the gain on the microphone. It also lets me adjust the bass, mid and treble, so I get hopefully a nice sounding voice. Comments, yeah, but that's on that. The other mixer behind it, that's actually connected to the output of my computer into the speaker system. But I can also use this if I want to work on something I'm repairing. I want to see if there's any audio coming out. Rather than connecting directly into the speakers, I connect into one of the inputs on this mixer, and then I can adjust the input, the volume from here, yeah? So that's what that mixer is used for. So that is the audio system. But there's a little bit of complication with the audio, so I'll just explain to you. The main problem I found with audio is that because I'm moving around while I'm doing repair work, the level of my voice was going up or down depending on where I was and if I was looking downwards or which way I was facing. So when I had to edit the video, the audio level was all over the place. Now you get around this problem by using an audio compressor. It can be hardware or software. I was going to buy a hardware audio compressor and I thought, you know what, let's just try the software one that's built into OBS because it's free, yeah? So in the audio settings, if I right click, filters, okay, this is the compressor settings. So you can see ratio, threshold, attack release, output gain. So I played around with these to get the effect I wanted. I adjusted a little bit over a few videos, but I haven't touched this for a long time. So what this actually does is it reduces the level of the loud parts of the audio it picks up to be the same level as the quiet parts. For example, if I'm speaking quietly like this. So although I'm speaking quietly and now I'm speaking loud, the compressor will balance up the level of my voice. Okay, you can see it on the VU meter. I'm actually speaking really, really quiet now. In fact, now I'm whispering. Okay, I'm whispering to you guys. And now I'm speaking loud. Okay, and although it goes up some, it doesn't go up a great deal. Without the audio compressor, you would have audio levels way down here when I'm whispering and hitting the top when I'm speaking loud. Okay, so once you reduce the high levels to match the low levels, you then have to increase the gain to bring the whole thing up. And you'll notice in the settings a gain of about 9.5 dB. Each 3 dB effectively doubles the level. So it basically means that the level of audio coming out of this is 8 times higher than the quiet bits. And what that does is it increases the background noise as well. So when I show you how I edit the videos, I'll show you how this setup works, both with and without filtering on, because I need to filter out the background noise, especially from the air conditioning, for example. So that's the physical hardware of the recording setup. Okay. Up here, I have my test meters to my left-hand side. Beneath the recording monitor, I have signal generator, another scope. These are the tools that I use all the time, just close for me to grab. Then I have, well, a bottle of water, but behind that, I have my hot air station, my T12 soldering iron, and my C210 soldering iron, and then some more tools, okay, that I don't use quite so often. You've seen the power supplies, the scopes, the variac. This is another bench magnifier I use sometimes. So that's basically how I have it set up. Oh, sitting up there is my hot air desoldering station as well, the vacuum desolder. Okay, so that's how I have the thing set up. I'll just quickly draw this out on paper so you can see exactly how it works. Okay, so we have the video sources. This is that NavSeca 4-way controller. So this is USB 3, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 inputs. Overhead, that's the Sony. The Andon Star. PC number 2. Yeah. And the optical microscope. So that's the 4 I can select with that little remote control. And normally one of those is the background, okay? Then I have the other HDMI to USB 3. So this has the HDMI into this one. I also have the adapter for DVI, okay? So I can capture from both of those sources. So we'll call this capture. And then this is USB 3. And then I have the 3 cameras. So we have face. We have instruments. And we have side. This is the zoom camera. This used to be over the bench at one time, as I mentioned. So each of these then is USB. And that's the whole setup. The other one thing I want to add is a VGA to USB. And then I think I have everything I could possibly need. I've now switched off all the other video sources apart from face, which you can see me, and I have window capture on, okay? So I can now actually capture the desktop from this PC. This is the OBS Studio I mentioned I use, and the other software I use is the editing software. This is DaVinci Resolve. Again, there's a free and a paid version of this. Basically, for this sort of video making, they are the same. There isn't any real difference between them. The only important thing I would mention is that the free version, uses the processor to actually render the video, and the paid version will use your graphics card. So it will render about 10 times faster. At 30 frames per second, 1080p, I can render about, let's say, 1 hour video in about 35 to 40 minutes. If I was using the paid version and have that on the machine at home, I can render that in maybe 3 minutes, 3-4 minutes. So it does make it a lot quicker. I don't use this machine much for editing. I do mostly editing at home. But I will show you basically how the editor works. So this is the editor software. Again, use the free version. I think you'll find it's fine. If we get some video files, drag them into the editor. I'll change it to use the frame rate of the video files. I won't teach you how to edit video. I could do, but there's plenty of other people who are probably better at that, okay? But with this, basically, I can drag in my video files. I can play through them. I can hear the sound. I can cut pieces out of it and such like. So I can actually chop pieces out of it and so on. On my Workbench, you can see the second. So basically, when I'm recording, I tend to do chunks at a time. It could be a couple of minutes, it could be 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes I kind of wander off to go do something or find something, so I get these gaps in the video, and with this software I can actually remove them. Okay, so that's what we do with it. But the other thing I wanted to show you was to do with the audio. So I mentioned about the background noise. So this has an option here called Fairlight, and then here I have effects, restoration, noise reduction. And if I click on this, I can actually reduce the noise. So I'm now speaking and you're listening to me with the noise reduction switched on, okay? But let's switch the noise reduction off and then you can hear the difference. So it's now switched off, so especially if you're using headphones, you should hear quite a bit of background hiss behind me. Okay, so that's what that does. Obviously with this software I can also add titles, on screen graphics and various things, but if you want to learn video editing, well, there's plenty of places you can go and do that. Okay, so well, somebody asked and some people gave thumbs up, so that's how I have this set up. I'm not saying this is the only way. This evolved for me, as I mentioned, over a period of time, but it actually, I think, works very well. What do you guys think? Because you're the guys who watch it, yeah? Okay, so that was a deep dive into setting up a recording studio for this sort of work. Maybe I'll encourage some of you guys to make your own videos. Yeah, let us know. Tell us if you're making some videos yourself in a similar sort of thing or a different sort of thing. As you know, we have the Gran Canaria one covered. That uses completely different equipment. If you're really interested, I can show you what we use on that one as well. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you all soon on Learning Electronics Repair. Ciao for now, guys.